Oh, how's it going, guys? Welcome to this episode of Aussie English, the number one podcast for anyone and everyone wanting to level up their Australian English. Guys, I have a story for you. I have quite a yarn to tell you. So, the house that we're renting recently had to have the wood oven serviced and parts of it fixed and replaced because it was falling apart. The bottom of it was rusting, and the top of it, I'm not actually sure what that's called, if it's a flue or the hat or something, whatever it is that's on top of the actual chimney. That flew off in some rough weather, some really windy weather, and ended up in the tree in front of our house. So anyway, the real estate agent got in contact with the owner of the house, and they had to call someone out here to repair it. And so they ended up getting a guy who works as a chimney sweep. And this is a sort of very old profession from, industrial England or industrial Europe, where they used to have kids and adults as well climbing up and down chimneys, scraping out the coal and soot so that they worked more efficiently. Anyway, the guy came over and he had a very strange accent, an accent I wasn't used to hearing in Australia, and it was an accent from parts of northern England, a part called Yorkshire. So after he ended up coming and repairing and doing an amazing job on the wood oven, I decided to shoot him a text and ask him if he'd like to come on the podcast, as we'd sort of gotten into a bit of a yarn, a bit of a chat whilst he was here, talking about a bunch of different things, Australia, England, what it was like migrating here. And I thought it'd be cool to get him on the podcast so that you guys could see what it was like for an English speaker to come to Australia and hear about his story, his experience, because he brought his whole family out here. Anyway, so the gentleman's name is Jon Stewart, and his company is called A1 Chimney Sweep and Co. If you live around the Geelong area and you guys need your wood ovens checked out, make sure that you get them serviced quite often if you have one. Definitely contact Jonathan. He's a great guy, as you're about to find out, at A1 Chimney Sweep and Co. Okay? Anyway, let's get into it. I give you guys Jonathan, the chimney sweep from Yorkshire, England. Right, let's get it going. So, Jonathan, thank you so much for coming in. Do you prefer John or Jonathan?
I'm not too fussed. John's probably a bit better, yeah. More formal.
Is it a bit like that in Britain where the sort of upper class prefer their full names and they don't like using nicknames, whereas the lower class are kind of like, nah, don't associate me with that, use the short version?
It's funny because obviously I'm not upper class. But
I didn't mean that in an offensive way. I'm not either, so it's all good.
So look, back home, because I grew up obviously there, and I had my nickname Jono, my sort of nickname, but my wife's always called me Jonathan, and my mum, only my wife and my mum call me Jonathan.
When you get in trouble?
And Vicar as well on a Sunday, he calls me Jonathan. Yeah. But no, yeah, so when we came here, nobody knew me. And my wife kept calling me Jonathan, so everybody just started calling me Jonathan.
Yep.
So I just stuck with it, and I put it on my business cards. I don't mind it, but I don't mind John, Johnny, whatever you want to call me, mate. I'm easy going with it.
Yeah, it's the same. I always get asked, do you prefer Pete or Peter? And I'm like, just Pete, just Pete.
Yeah,
don't make it formal at all. I hate it.
Yeah.
Mate, so the first thing I think people are going to notice is your accent. Can you tell me where it's from? And
well, specifically, it's funny because if you go to England, each town's got well, maybe not each town, but each county's definitely got a different accent. So I'm from Yorkshire, which is one of the biggest counties in England. Now, my accent is West Yorkshire, specifically Leeds, that sort of area, Castleford, Wakefield.
Yep.
My wife's from South Yorkshire, which is Doncaster, and her accent's completely different.
So it's actually regionalised within Yorkshire.
Within Yorkshire, yeah. So you can tell the difference between somebody from North Yorkshire. North Yorkshire's getting more up towards Newcastle.
Yeah.
So that starts to change a little bit. But it's not full Geordie until you get right up to Newcastle. That's the Geordie accent.
That's the
so
Geordie.
It's quite weird. My accent is distinguishable between a 40-mile radius.
Yeah. So
pretty much.
Because that's one of the things that's always fascinated me. I can't I can't really with any certainty tell you when I hear an Australian accent, oh, they're from this area, exactly. But do you guys have that kind of built into your interactions in the UK a lot more, where you hear someone talk and you already have a lot more information about them before they even necessarily tell you something interesting?
Yeah, look, you know, it's... I know when I was doing your chimney other week, we were talking about, you know, different areas and dialects and small town mentality, and so we're not too far from Liverpool.
Yeah. Shameless, right?
Exactly, yeah.
From Liverpool.
Beatles, Liverpool.
Yep.
Now, Liverpool's always been typified as, we call them Scousers, that's the nickname for Liverpudlian Scousers.
It's just the English people with no teeth, right?
Exactly, yeah. They've got curly hair, they've always got black curly hair, and they always used to wear shell suits, you know. So when they did sit shows on telly, I'm just trying to think which best one was. But the best sit show that typified that would have been. It'll come to me in a minute. I'll remember it in a minute. Not the one with Harry Enfield in. No, it was the one with Harry Enfield in. But anyway, yes. So they used to be seen with Scousers, and they always wore shell suits.
Yep.
Black curly wigs, and they always talk like this. Hey, calm down, calm down. That's how people typify a Scouser. You know, hey, calm down, calm down. That's not that far from Yorkshire. You know what I mean? So we call Scousers scallies as well.
Scallies. So there's a bit of a
scallywag.
That slang happening too.
Yeah, bit of slang, you know, if you're in England and you're talking about Liverpool, you say, oh, I drove through Liverpool today, or I'm working in Liverpool, or, you know, you go back on an evening, you'd be having a beer in pub, and all boys would say, oh, you still got your wheels on then, you know what I mean? If you stopped in Liverpool at a set of traffic lights, they'd have your wheels, you know what I mean?
Ripped off your car, robbed off you.
And then, you know, but they'd take mickey out of us.
Yeah.
They call us, you know, Yorkshire puddings, and we all wear flat caps and take us whip it for a walk on beach, you know what I mean?
That's a big part of British culture, right? That's sort of also Australian culture, is the taking the mickey, taking the piss out of each other.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, it shows that you actually like the other group, right? Or at least you have a sort of respect or understanding of them.
That's right, yeah. It's, you know, England and Scotland, you know, there's always, an Ireland and Wales, there's always that. From years ago, bit of, you know, where we've had feuds and fights. Mm-hmm. First time I went to Scotland, I were apprehensive, you know, because I thought, oh, how are they going to take English, you know what I mean?
Just don't open your mouth, you'll be fine.
Exactly. But no, they're cool, you know.
Yep.
Like you say, you know, Aussies come to England, they go to London, there's a big community in London of Australians, and they get on like an house on fire, you know, everybody really gets on. But we all have a bit of a joke with each other as well. So
what's the standard British person's thought of Australia? Do you guys think we ride kangaroos to work, and, you know, we're all tanned, you know, idiots, bogans? I don't know. What's the stereotype?
It's funny. It's a funny one because sort of from 1980s, obviously with Neighbours and shows like that coming on TV.
Neighbours and Home and Away, right?
And Home and Away.
Yeah.
Kind of blew. Prior to that, the only sort of thing we could associate with Australia were things like Crocodile Dundee. massive hit films worldwide, you know.
Yep.
Good on him, Paul Hogan. He did a couple of great films there.
The Australian government was happy with the tourism dollars after that.
Exactly, yeah, yeah. And I think he funded it all himself, didn't he?
I'm not sure. Could have been.
He got like consortiums behind him, and people were chucking money in, and then they all got a fantastic return, which is good. But yeah. Great films, and at the time, you know, we thought, oh, it's all red, dusty, sort of fantastic outdoorsy, rough and tumble, tough guys, knives and crocs, you know what I mean?
Well, in some parts. Not everywhere.
But yeah, and we, you know, that it's a vast continent, but never realised how big. You know, people don't sort of stand at pubs saying, oh, we don't sort of, you know, England's this big, America's that big, Australia's that big. But yeah, then Neighbours came on and made it more sort of, I don't know, made it more English, if you like.
Yeah.
We could really sort of click with it.
Is that why it went so big over there? Because now I heard Neighbours is really...
It's still massive, I think, yeah. I know I'm away, yeah.
I think you guys are the biggest exporters of that show compared to anywhere else, if there are even any other countries watching it.
but in fairness, I mean, nowadays, I don't know who's in it, I don't watch it. The kids do, but you've got to remember that back in the day when Neighbours started, it was Kylie Minogue.
That's right.
You had Jason Donovan, Kylie Minogue, but, blokes watched it for Kylie, and there were a few other nice-looking Sheilas in there.
They tend to be the places that a lot of Australian actors get their start, like Chris Hemsworth was from Home and Away.
Right, okay.
Yeah, Thor nowadays.
Yeah,
And
Hemsy,
the singer Delta Goodrem started on...
Delta
I
Goodrem.
can't remember if that was Neighbours. I think it was Neighbours.
And
as well.
Natalie Imbruglia.
Yeah, that was another one.
Yeah. Watching it when Kylie were in it, and people sort of thought, well, houses look same. It's green grass. Everybody seems pretty, normal. So we all realised that Australia wasn't just this barren, desolate.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
I think a lot of Australians don't know though themselves how big Australia is, right?
Yeah.
Did that shock you when you came over here though, and you sort of met a lot of people who hadn't travelled much here?
Well, our first sort of realisation how big Australia was is when we were emigrating. So we were on the plane. We'd been on plane. We'd actually been travelling when we landed at Melbourne, Tullamarine. We'd actually been travelling for 36 hours.
Jesus, which route did you take?
So we flew with Royal Brunei,
yeah,
which is another story because, unbeknown to me, we googled it and they were the cheapest flights.
Yeah,
right. One way. Remember, we're not doing return. This is a one way trip, but you don't really get much discount for one way. You know what I mean? So anyway, we booked the flights for Royal Brunei, and I've been told all these fantastic stories about when you fly long haul to Australia, places like that, they'll look after you, plenty of food, plenty of drink, you and all that sort of thing. So we get on flight at London Heathrow, and we're on our way to Royal Brunei, or it might have been. That's where we did go to Royal Brunei, but we might have stopped at. Where would we have stopped before or after? What's the other place?
Dubai or something?
Dubai. That's the one, yeah. We either stopped at Dubai. My World Geographics are a bit... I can't remember if Dubai's first or Royal Brunei. I can't remember.
I think it's Dubai and then Brunei's near Malaysia, right? Yeah.
So we'd have stopped at Dubai and then stopped at Royal Brunei.
Yep.
But anyway, so we've got on plane at Heathrow, and probably a third away from Heathrow to Dubai, I'm starting to think, when do they start serving beer then, I'm ready for a beer. I like a beer. And about half a way to Dubai, I started then, sort of walking up and down aisles, stretching my legs,
having a
going
look
to the toilet, sort of looking at people, who's got a drink, who ain't got a drink. And I asked the fella, I said, when do they start serving alcohol? He says, mate, you're on a dry flight.
Yeah, it's an Islamic country,
right? It's an
right?
Islamic country, and I'm like, oh, trust me, you know what I mean? Get the cheapest, best deal on your tickets.
Yeah.
Food were great, staff were great, but there was just no alcohol, so that
BYO,
I don't even know if you'd be able to do that. That might be quite offensive to them.
Yeah, far out.
But
be
yeah,
careful.
that were interesting. And Brunei is a really interesting country. So we did a bit of a tour of Brunei because we were there for about 12 hours.
Oh, really? Okay, so you had a good stopover.
Yeah, we got our heads down in first class lounge. There were nobody about, so we went in first class lounge and just laid on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we all had a good sleep. We'd been up for probably 24 hours at that point.
Yeah.
And so we all had a good kick. Got up. Went to information desk, got us passports, special visa attached so we could leave airport on a little tour. We went on a little tour around Brunei, and we all went into town centre, and everybody was sort of looking at us with this little bus of, different cultures getting off and walking around, and really friendly people. Got to try some of the sort of local cuisine, little street food stalls, and. So we experienced that. Everybody had a great time, and tour guide was telling us all. He said Royal Brunei is a really, really strict country. The Sultan of Brunei is really tough, and he said not many years ago, a tourist or someone visiting Brunei got drunk and got caught driving a vehicle, driving,
man.
And they hung him.
Really?
Yeah, death penalty.
Jesus.
Because it's illegal to have alcohol in Brunei.
Yeah.
Some people apparently do make it and keep it really quiet. But if you're caught driving a vehicle whilst under influence, it's curtains.
Well, I think a lot of them have started to bring in Sharia law, some of the especially Brunei. So, you don't want to have alcohol on you if Sharia law is there.
And there's big signs as well in these, in Dubai and all these countries, as soon as you get off plane, there's signs everywhere saying drug traffickers will be executed. So they're pretty much telling you straight away what the score is.
Don't be surprised.
Yeah, so you do feel a little bit, I suppose, sorry for these people that are being executed for drug trafficking, but the writing's on the wall, really.
Well, and I think in a lot of those countries, it's worth them doing it, or they see it as worth them doing it because it's illegal and because the penalties are so high, right? So they're going to make a lot of money if they do it, but yeah, they accept the risks when they do that.
It's not a very good job to have, is it? knowing the outcomes, potential, probably statistically more risky than being in infantry.
I don't know. Yeah, I wouldn't put my hand up for that.
No.
But back to the story though. When you got to Australia, what was the situation? You got off the plane?
Sorry, I forgot. I went off a tangent then.
No, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. So we carried on from Brunei, and you can see this is only 8 years ago, so you've got a screen up back of your seat.
Yeah.
And you could flick between channels, you'd be watching films and programmes, and you could watch the flight.
Yeah, how far it's gone from destinations, right?
And you're watching it, and it's slowly getting towards Australia. You can see the tip of Australia. You're coming over what's left of Asia at the top end there.
Yeah.
And Captain announced we're now flying over Darwin.
And you're like, we're here.
Yeah.
Man, we're here. We're about to get ready. We're getting off the plane.
Well, this is exactly where it was like. Me and my wife and kids were all like, hey, cheering, and nobody else is, you know what I mean? Like,
beer.
Yeah. It's, almost getting up and getting his luggage out at locker sort of thing. And we didn't. I knew we were going right down to the other end. I knew Victoria were down here, but we'd never been here.
Yeah.
We'd never done a recce or been on holiday here.
Yeah.
And like I say, nobody sort of really knew. We'd never discussed how big and vast Australia was.
Yeah.
It's almost the size of US.
Yeah,
it's literally
exactly
the same size. It's about 50 times bigger than England. And when you think about that, that's the whole of Europe.
With a third the population, right?
Exactly, yeah. It's crazy when you think about it.
Yeah.
So we're flying over and over and over, and planes sort of making progress, not by... And, we start, then we have another nap, and some more food comes round, and get up, stretch his legs, go to the toilet another 15 times, and then we're only halfway over Australia. So about 7 hours later, we finally landed in Victoria, and it was like, whoa, how big's this place? So we landed at Victoria, Melbourne, Tullamarine.
Yep.
And as first sort of glimpse of real Australia, we're coming out of the terminal to get the bus, what's it called now? The
shuttle bus.
The shuttle bus.
And was this winter?
Sky bus.
Was this winter or was this
It was October.
Summer? Okay, so it was coming into summer.
It was actually, to be precise, it was October the 16th or 17th. And I'll come to that in a minute. I'd just turned 40 as well. So literally as we were flying over the week after I turned 40. I turned 40 on the 28th of October. So it was a great 40th birthday present, coming here. So we get the shuttle bus from Tullamarine to Southern Cross Station in Melbourne.
Yeah.
And that was real sort of feel of city life, because we stepped out of the train station terminus where the shuttle bus dropped us off.
Yep.
And there's a couple of shops across the road there where you can buy snacks and food and things like that. So we stepped out onto that busy street there, the main street, and we're like, wow, it was a lovely day, sunny. It's really buzzing, and we're like, wow, this is great. Does
it feel like a British city?
It reminds me a bit of London.
Yeah.
Melbourne. You've got some old stone buildings, and you've got the big streets, the high buildings. You've got the new modern buildings, but you've got the older stone buildings, the old banks.
Yeah.
The architecture, so it kind of felt familiar in a way.
But I guess in London it goes way back. I think the oldest buildings in Melbourne would be 1835
probably
maximum.
1800s,
yeah, maximum. But you'd go further back than that, I'd assume.
Yeah, look, London's probably got some really old buildings, but I think they lost the really old ones in the Great Fires.
True. Was that the 1800s?
No. Well, let me think. The Great Fire of London was... No, I think the first one was something like... I'm going to say...
Because it was when everything was wood, right?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But the Great Fire of London wasn't actually the Great Fire of London. So the Great
You mean
Fire...
there was a bigger one before
There were a much bigger one before then. Pudding Lane, I think the recent one started on, in
Yeah.
a baker's shop. And I think there only one person died. I think it was somebody in the baker's. You can go on the tour. It's quite good.
Far out.
So a lot of the really old buildings have gone, but you do still see some of the old Crook timber buildings. They're the real sort of old ones, several 100-year-old, sort of 1500s, 1400s sometimes.
The stuff that I see online where you see this pub's been in use since the 1500s, you're just like,
It's weird.
What the hell? Like, that's insane.
And you can tell as well, because you go in these old buildings and they're really small.
Yeah.
You've got to duck to get. I mean,
British people were smaller back then, right?
Well,
malnourished and
they say this. I've seen it on. I don't know if you ever see. There's a quiz show called QI.
Yeah. With what's his name?
Stephen
Fry, exactly. Yeah.
It's been taken over by that lady now. A different lady does it.
I've only ever seen it with Stephen Fry. Yeah, it was a pisser.
It's great. It's still on now on UK TV on Foxtel. So when I get home on a night, I flick that on and watch that for half an hour. But the facts that he has on there are great, because you learn all sorts of stuff. And what question again? I've forgotten.
About the pubs being so old,
pubs,
right?
Yeah. And that was what you just said. Everybody's been led to believe it's because people were tiny.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily. Apparently, that's not true.
Yeah.
I think it was just the cost of materials to make something bigger and higher, and especially out of timber. The bigger and higher went with timber, the harder it was, because the strength and the stresses so even then people were ducking, and plus you had taxes on things like glass.
Didn't they have the window tax or something?
They had a window tax.
So what was the deal with that?
Because glass were very expensive to make and process, so you could only afford windows if you were rich.
But didn't that just mean that a whole lot of them just built rooms with no windows, right?
Exactly. So the poorer classes lived in rooms with no window.
There's a few crazy things happening there, because I remember I was reading a book recently called Holy Shit, The History of Swearing, and they were talking about...
That's a good name.
It's a really good book. It was really interesting, because they talk about during the Enlightenment how originally swearing wasn't that related to sex. And you wouldn't have all the rude words related to penises and vaginas and everything like that, because you would see it every day. So it wasn't a big deal. It was just like you just stating the obvious if you said, arm or leg. And they were saying that a big thing that changed was that during the Enlightenment, all of a sudden they worked out how to make chimneys that went through the entire house and heated different rooms, so they could have suddenly different rooms all year round. Because I think they were stuck in one room at night normally, but all of a sudden they had their privacy, and that's when the swear words started meaning vagina and penis and everything like that, because all of a sudden you covered it and you had privacy and everything.
I'm with you.
But it was
interesting.
It was crazy to think, for how much of our history did we only have a single room in a house for the whole family, right?
Yeah, everybody would just sleep on the floor, and there'd be a fire in the middle.
Exactly.
Just a little hole in the thatched roof for the smoke to get out. Hygiene would have been pretty poor.
Well, that's it, right?
And
imagine the bugs in the floor and everything like that.
Well, that's it, they'd be covered in lice. But it's funny you should say that. Just going back to this swearing bit, most swear words, well, not most, but some swear words are actually in the dictionary and they mean something else. So,
originally, right?
Yeah, so if I won't say it, but if
the F word?
No, the C word, the really offensive one. Is actually was a stone with a hole in the middle, and it's in the dictionary.
Really?
So you can understand how that, you know what I mean? People slang it, whatever you want, and change. Well, my father-in-law who told me, I was listening to him and his mates in pub.
Yeah. I'm
stood there, I've just met his daughter, I'm dating his daughter, and they're all talking about stuff like that. So I thought, this is all right, you know what I mean?
They're relaxed.
I feel a bit more easy now, these are normal fellas or not. But so, this and that, and it's got a hole in the middle, C-U-N-T.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's weird,
It's bizarre, because I found out too that a lot of the old swearing that was really offensive was related to God. Saying God's eyes or God's blood or whatever.
Blasphemous.
Yeah, because they thought that God had to look at you when you said that, and that was why it was so offensive.
Yeah, people sort of kept in the place by religion.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
there were, weren't there? There were people were scared to go out of line because they went to church every Sunday, and the vicar was the main man.
Yeah.
You had this big church with its big, powerful architecture, and you went to work 6 days a week. You had Sunday off. Wore your best clothes, and you went to church, and if you were Catholic, you did the old confessional thing. Got rid of I got it all off your chest on a Sunday.
Yeah, exactly.
So you were able to start a fresh week Monday morning and carry on.
I wonder how wore out the fathers would get in the Catholic churches, because you just be like, more problems. Like, these people are so full of drama. Oh my God.
Well, yeah, not only that, but, all this terrible stuff that's coming out about, Catholic Church, but I'm sure it's not just Catholic Church. I'm sure. Well, there's been a lot of things on recently that are making highlights. That guy in America that's just topped himself.
Oh, yeah. The rich guy. What's his name? Epstein, right?
Epstein, yeah. I'm following that on YouTube. There's a guy in England. I've got a link to it. And I don't know if you remember, when he got imprisoned a while ago, Prince Andrew was seen talking to him after he got out.
Yeah.
Well, there's now a new video. Prince Andrew's, this is disgraceful. All I did was talk to him. Well, there's a video of him actually in his house.
Yeah, I saw waving goodbye to a girl or something.
A young lady, and it's all looking a bit more...
Who knows? What is it? I guess, talking about Prince Andrew and the royal family in England, what was it like leaving a country that had a royal family and coming to Australia? Was there any big difference? Do you even think about it from day-to-day life? Like, in England, is it a big deal?
No, look, I suppose it depends on if you're a royalist or not.
These are the people who enjoy following
who follow the royal family, everything they do. They read the books, they watch them on TV, they buy the... Look, because of where I grew up in Yorkshire, it's a very working class town.
Yeah.
We don't benefit at all from the royal family up north.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Down south, in the London area, they do, because of the tourism industry. It brings massive amounts of money in through tourism. Just the royal family, visiting the palace, buying trinkets, all that sort of stuff.
Just a little closer.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
You're right.
So the south of England, there's always been a north-south divide.
Yep.
So anywhere from sort of Birmingham down is what we class as south of England. They benefit from royalty, they benefit from the lottery, funding. All that seems to get spent south of the border. The more north you go, the tougher life gets and the harder it is.
And then the Scottish have got the line between England and Scotland.
Exactly, they've got Hadrian's Wall, and they don't want out to do with anything below that. So, look, my nan, bless her, she were a royalist.
Yeah.
She'd turn in a grave if she'd seen what happened, in the last few years with Andrew and... all that sort. She loved the royal family, If there were a scandal in royal family, my gran used to get quite upset about it, She'd go up and see...
These are my people. I don't watch soccer. I watch the royal family.
But my nan she were a nice lady. She always dressed really nice and always kept herself looking really well. And you could... And she always had a lovely handbag, I think to a certain degree she thought she were related to Queen, you know what I mean? in a funny way. But
what do you think of the royalists here in Australia, though? Because I remember every time there's a baby or there's a wedding, there are people in Australia who go bonkers for it.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
Is that weird?
It seems...
Like, do you think, you bloody colonialists?
No, look, I don't think that. I mean, it's funny because when you're in England, you take everything for granted. Obviously, you probably, if you're born in whichever country you're born in, you take everything that you've got for granted. Yeah, and you look at...
That's just normal, right?
Well, that's right. Yeah, you look at other countries probably through different glasses. So being born in England, it's all natural. You grow up with all this, what's going on around your whole family. Yeah, being in papers, paparazzi's probably a lot more ferocious in England. The actual paparazzi system. Yeah. So
it's almost unheard of here, really.
Yeah, everything's in the papers there. Yeah. You can't get away with anything, So coming here, maybe it's just that I didn't really think about it that much in England. Maybe people do get carried away with all that sort of stuff. But I know I have noticed it here. And like I say, whether or not it's just that I didn't really notice it back home because I was used to it. Yeah. But coming here, I have noticed it feels... coming to Australia, for me, felt a little bit like having some weight lifted off my shoulders to a certain degree.
Because we don't have the same kind of class divide or pressures or...
It's a lot more easygoing. Right? In Australia, I love how if you're a dustbin man or an editor or a or a PA or a politician or a policeman, whatever you are, everybody seems to be treated equally.
Well, I think it's because we're all at least culturally, from convicts, right? And the early settlers were all effectively the scum from England.
Right, yeah,
that you guys were trying to get rid of.
Yeah.
And so we were like, we got here and we're like, all right, we're starting afresh, F the Royal Party and class divide. So it's weird. Does it get weird for you when you see, say, Malcolm Turnbull on TV, our older prime ministers? I'm not sure what Scott Robinson's like, but he used to always be like, g'day, how's it going? Trying to be more Aussie than I think he really was, because it's a much more, I want to pull myself down so I'm at the level of the average person. Whereas in England, is it the opposite, where they're constantly trying to pull themselves up? The prime minister is like, oh yes, quite,
And again, you get that more with politics in England are a bit different. So the Conservative Party that are in at the moment, Boris Johnson's now running the Conservative Party.
This is the Tories?
The Tories, yeah. So they're not... You wouldn't necessarily... Most people up the north of England don't vote Tory.
Yeah.
They vote Labour.
Yeah.
Labour's always been seen as more working class or Liberal.
Yeah.
But Liberal haven't had much success until they joined an alliance with...
is this Jeremy Corbyn's
Jeremy
party?
Corbyn.
Yeah.
No, hang on a minute. No, Jeremy Corbyn... Is Jeremy Corbyn not Labour? Oh, I'm not sure now.
I think he's Labour, isn't he?
Is it Labour? I think he is Labour, yeah.
Socialist.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's pretty much how... I think somebody once... I can't remember who said it, but somebody said, the English make good socialists. They should have been communists.
They will be soon. Don't speak too soon. It's happening, man. It's happening.
Especially north of England, people have never had much.
Yeah.
And they had to pretty much fend for themselves to a certain degree, When I was growing up, you never saw your dad. They were always working shifts, 12-hour shifts. Your mum would have to have a job. Yep. Interest rates were sky high when I were young growing up. I think I know you guys had it as well.
17%, my grandparents always remind me.
That's what we had, roughly the same. My dad was paying... Basically, all his wages went on the mortgage.
On the interest rate.
On the interest. It would have been better off to have lived in social housing. There were a social housing estate not far from where we lived. My dad and my mum, bless them, had both grown up in social housing.
Yep. And
decided, like you do, to better themselves, and wanted to get out of that.
Yeah.
So when I was born, they decided to get a mortgage and buy a house and get off social housing.
But they had a harder time as a result.
Because the interest rates rocketed.
Yeah.
People in social housing were paying the same rent every week. People who had a mortgage were paying, hundreds of pounds in interest.
Because what social housing they're paying to the government, are they? They're not paying to the bank.
It's just a set fee in rent, that's right. So you're just paying rent every week.
Yeah.
And it were cheaper rent because it was social housing. Which is a different thing to what you've got here again. Like, you've got social housing, but there's only one or two dotted around.
Yeah.
Whereas in England, they've got whole estates.
Oh, really?
So it can be quite intimidating, and it's quite a bad design fault from a crime point of view.
Because it just ghettoises, right? Everyone's in the one place, and so it's just manifesting a lot of crime. Yeah.
So back in the early days when social housing were invented in England, council houses, and they built these big estates, it was pretty much just after war. They used German POWs to build some of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the estate that my mum and dad grew up on were built by POWs.
No kidding.
Yeah, which they probably got pretty well treated. They had to build some houses and got fed and watered.
Yeah.
But the idea behind it at first were great. People went into those houses, very proud people, moving into these brand new lovely houses, because they'd been really modern when they were first built.
Yeah.
They'd been living in probably squalid conditions through war, they'd been bombed, places changed, people died, they moved into these houses, they had indoor toilets. It was like, wow, this is, you know what I mean?
We didn't get those till the 90s.
Dunnies.
That's it, the outdoor dunny, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I love the outdoor dunny. I've been to a couple of campsites where they've got drop toilets and stuff.
Yeah.
Not wrong with that.
There's a distinct smell, right?
Yeah,
it's kind of like...
You've got to prepare yourself when you go into them places sometimes, especially when there's a lot of you sharing, yeah. But it's...
That's it. The drop dunnies in like isolated places that don't get visited too much are fine. It's the ones that they get frequented every day.
Yeah. And also the wondering what's down there. You know what bugs are in there.
I just hope no one's ever dropped their phone. Like what would you do?
You'd leave it, mate.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to look down for a start, and unless it had a really good case on.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you just sort of heard it blub, disappearing, you know.
Yeah, brutal.
But yeah. So initially, it was a great idea. Everybody had a job.
Yeah,
they all paid the rent. They had these lovely houses, and then it dragged into 50s, into 60s, into the 70s. Things were still good, and then Margaret Thatcher thought it was a good idea to start selling the council houses to the tenants if they wanted to. She thought by doing that, if they had a mortgage rather than paying rent, it'd be... she would try to combat unemployment.
Yeah, and give them their own wealth,
incentive,
right?
To get a job or to keep the job, to pay the mortgage.
Yeah.
And from then on, it just sort of slowly declined. I think that was just a catalyst. It wasn't the main reason.
Yeah.
But people then started not bothering going to work, claiming benefits, letting the front yard turn into a rubbish dump, the backyard. The neighbours did the same. The kids were out in the streets, causing havoc.
Yeah.
And they just turned into mini ghettos.
Yeah,
drugs came into it.
Keeps going, right?
One of the biggest problems we had in 80s and 90s were a massive influx of heroin.
Yeah. Is this where train spotting comes from, the movie?
Yeah,
right?
well, that's around about the time when it were an epidemic. You know? It were in the paper every day. Somebody else had overdosed in your local paper.
Yeah.
This wasn't nationally, this was locally. It were nationally, locally. And another problem as well with what Margaret Thatcher did with the miners' strike is... It stunk, really. It were really bad what she did. So Arthur Scargill decided he were going to call a strike for the miners to get better pay deals, better conditions. But what he didn't do, he didn't hold a ballot. He just said, right, everybody out, right? About 90% of miners came out, the ones in Yorkshire. But where Yorkshire borders Nottingham and other counties, they had coal mines and they wouldn't come out.
Yeah.
Right? They said, no, we're not part of Yorkshire, we're going to carry on. But what Arthur Scargill didn't realise is that because it had been on the cards for a while and he'd been sort of showing his hand a little bit, Margaret Thatcher had been stockpiling coal for several years. Right? So she were playing poker with him.
Yeah.
And she didn't care. So she said, right, no problem. And Arthur Scargill were thinking, well, hang on a minute, this will hurt him here because power stations, everything depended on coal.
She's like, look out the back, mate.
Exactly, mate. And that's what really crushed the miners' strike. So the miners went out on strike, and my wife's from that area, Doncaster, one of the most heavily mined areas in Europe.
Isn't it in Melbourne?
Yeah, there's a Doncaster in Melbourne, yeah, that's right, yeah. That's funny that when we came here, we kept hearing about Doncaster.
Well, places like Belmont, Richmond,
Is it quite a nice part of Melbourne?
Doncaster, I think so. It tends to be, at least in my mind, it's associated with a massive shopping centre. I think it's a massive mall in Doncaster.
I know I heard one of the scallywags lived there. One of the
Liverpool's.
One of the underbelly mob.
Ah, possibly. They lived everywhere.
I remember seeing it on news. Not long after we got here, one of the people who were in the underbelly lived somewhere around Doncaster area.
Yeah, it's probably right. Like if you go up Lygon Street, there's a lot of places there where they shot people and.
Is that where a lot of it went on?
Yeah, they were all at least with, I think Gatto was his name, Mick Gatto. Yeah, he shot one of the guys in the back of one of these restaurants you can go into today. Still,
yeah. So that's in Chinatown.
No, that's on Lygon Street. Which is the Italian, all the Italian restaurants and everything in Melbourne, yeah.
Italian, not Chinese, so sort of Italian, sort of mafia style thing.
Yeah, they had a lot of that. There was a Greek guy as well who was, he tried to run off to Greece after doing a lot of drug dealing and stuff, but he was always there in his Ferrari, I think. I remember hearing about that.
It's funny that how Australia and America have both had this thing we sort of Italian. I don't mean when I say Italian, I mean Italian people are great.
Or just gangs and organised crime.
It seemed
right?
to be from that sort of part of the world.
Well, I think we had a lot of influx of those communities all at the same time after the Second World War.
And same with America, probably.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's all about people moving around, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, and they all form their own sort of groups, and then, you know, capitalism and businesses get sorted out, and then it doesn't take much for someone to take advantage of all those people who, you know, don't speak English and probably don't feel like they're a part of the outer society yet. And then, so that's why it all, I don't know, festers, I think.
Yeah. When you get any particular nationality or race of people living in pockets, they'll kind of generally, that area will sort of become.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean?
Definitely. Is that happening in England at the moment, though? Because I've heard there's a lot of issues in London now with knife crime and just lots of gangs and everything because there's so many immigrants. Is that becoming an issue that you know of, or have you left it behind?
I left it behind.
Not my issue.
And I don't really follow the news and politics in England, really.
Yeah. Was that weird, letting go of that?
Yeah. It was actually a relief.
Ah, okay.
You know, when we came here and moved into our first house, I can remember sitting down, watching telly with my wife and kids and feeling this almost like weight coming off me.
Just home and away all day, every day
just
now.
Like this, putting my feet up and having a beer and looking out the door. And we lived on this fantastic open sort of street in Port Arlington.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that had massive nature strips and a dirt road.
Yeah.
And all local kids and families were great, you know, and I just thought, how good's this?
You didn't have that back home in Yorkshire, or just a different style of living?
Different, it's totally different. The trouble with England is unless you've got a lot of money and you can afford to live in the countryside,
there's no space.
In a detached house, you're living on top of one another.
Yeah.
So you'd think it were pretty strange and crazy if you went to where we lived.
Yeah.
So one of the houses, the house that we lived in before we came here, well, the house that we sold, the house that we renovated and spent a lot of time there, a lot of happy memories with us kids growing up there. It was actually a mid-terrace, 3-bedroom property, and there were actually 4 houses in a block.
Yeah, that's what, you always see those, right? They've all been built by obviously the same person or the same group,
builder.
And then they've sold to separately.
Yeah,
separately.
But it were actually, funnily enough, going back to social housing.
Yeah,
it were actually a social housing estate.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So we got in there as a young family. We applied on list. We put his name down on local housing list.
Yep.
At the time, I'd just started working for myself and I didn't have much money. We just had my first daughter, Abigail, you know, and things are tough when you first start out, you know.
Tell me about it.
Exactly. You've just had your first.
Exactly, and this is my job, yeah. That's it.
And how's little one going at the moment? All good?
He's good. He's sleeping pretty well.
No, that's good. That's one of the main problems with babies, isn't it?
Yeah, well, he seemed like he was going to be a nightmare, but he seems to be now sleeping through 5 hours of the night.
That's good.
So my wife's just like, yes!
And there's a lot more information out there and science as well around it all, isn't there?
Well, I can't imagine back in, you know, in Australia or Britain back in the 17, 18, 19, early 1900s where you just kind of like, yeah, you just, you know, go have the baby and then you're good, go home, sort it out. That must have been crazy. But tell me about, too, being a chimney sweep. That's been in your family quite a while.
Yeah, it's, God, I could talk all day about it, really.
Well, I find it so interesting because Mum the other day was chatting to me. She does our family history. My mum and my dad do it, and we come from, I think, Sheffield and.
All right.
Yeah, so I think that's Yorkshire, right?
Sheffield's Yorkshire.
Yeah, so
Sheffield is very similar to where I grew up. It's not far at all.
Well, they moved out from there in the 1860s.
All right. Okay.
And she was saying that I think one of them was a cutler, someone who made scissors.
A
cutlery, yeah. And so that's all he did. Every day was put together 2 halves of scissors.
Yeah.
That was his job.
Well, that's where all the cutlery in the world were made, in Sheffield.
Really?
It were all made out of Sheffield stainless steel.
Yep.
You'll get any old piece of cutlery that's worth its salt now. Dig it up in your nan's drawer or whatever.
Yeah.
And typically it'll say Sheffield stainless steel made in England.
That's
now
crazy.
It's from everywhere else, but that's interesting, that having that link to Sheffield.
Well, and that it's just so funny because she was saying that any time back then that the dad would get a job, the kid would have that job.
That's right.
His kid would have that job.
That's right.
And it was like, that's it. You're set, right? Like, because I guess
That's how it was.
it's way riskier to be like, actually, I want to be a baker, you know, or I'm going to start my business.
You'd follow your dad, because he'd pass his knowledge. You'd go with him when you were a kid and watch how it were done.
Yeah.
And you think, oh, this is great, you know, and you were guaranteed a job.
Well, and it's too easy, right? Like, you can just, oh, yeah, I know the guy, you know.
Yeah, they worked hard and they played hard, you know. The guys who worked in the mills in Sheffield at that time when your ancestors came out in the 1800s would have been at its peak.
Yeah.
Sheffield, you look at old shows of Sheffield and Birmingham, old footage on TV video, and the guys were working in hot, really dirty conditions, molten steel splashing everywhere.
Yeah,
they had leather aprons on, very little in health and safety, and there were big, strong guys, and there were actually beer that were made specially for the steel workers. So because the steel workers lost so much fluid and minerals and salts through perspiring all day, there were actually a beer or several beers made in Sheffield. I think one of them were called XB. And they still sold it when I were drinking. And this beer it replenished you.
Oh, really? So it had a lot of nutrients and salts and stuff to keep you hydrated.
But also quite strong. These guys, you know, I'd think, no, are going straight to the pub and drinking 8 pints of beer.
Yeah.
They were, like I say, you know, they were big, strong fellas. They played hard, they worked hard. They were that kind of... They probably never went on holiday.
Yeah,
you know, they never really had any leisure time apart from Sunday. They'd go see Vicar and tell him all the sins. You know, I drank 12 pints last night and fought with my neighbour or whatever.
Imagine, because it's one of those things I think about recently of how much that life would have sucked, but at the same time, it's kind of set out for you, so you can kind of leave all the existential crap behind. You don't have to think, what am I going to do with my life? What am I going to be? It's kind of like, that's decided.
Well, that's right.
Find someone to marry, have kids, you're done. You know, and now just punish it.
And imagine to a certain degree, without sounding, you know, patronising, how easy it was.
Yeah.
Not in a physical sense.
But you knew what you had to do.
Yeah,
There's no, what will I do today?
That's right. There were no pressures regarding, you know, the latest telephones, computers, technology, cars. There were nothing.
The next gadget I have to learn to use for my business so that I can get a...
You know, they'd come home from work, they'd read the paper, eat the tea, go to bed, get up and do it all again. They knew how much they were getting paid and what they had to pay out. There were no... I suppose there might have been surprises down the line, you know, your roof caves in or whatever.
Or you get sick, you
you have a couple of, if you have a couple of sick days. But that'd be interesting actually as well to look at statistics regarding illness, sickness, compared to today, you know.
Well, the funny thing I think my mum's noticed is that one, people had so many more children, and two, they had so many more children that died.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of
kept having children to kind of make up for the fact.
Yeah. Well, we'd have a total of 8, 5 of who got to adulthood. Yeah.
And it was just classed as, you know, that were part of life. It was sad, but you moved on very quickly. You didn't all sort of mourn for weeks on end, and you know, it was just part of life. You know.
It must have been a brutal life. But what was it like for your family? When did they start becoming chimney sweeps? What's the history of it?
Well, it's pretty interesting. I mean, I've done a bit of research, and from what my granddad told me and my dad. So basically, what happened is around about when the Industrial Revolution started, 250 years ago, with the invention of steam and all that sort of thing. Yeah. In Yorkshire, particularly, all these big factories started up around the woolen and cotton industries, and there were, you know, heaps of factories with big chimneys everywhere. You know, with
children running around under the machines collecting wool and cotton, right? Yeah.
Little kids.
And in the chimneys.
and in the chimneys. So not only did every house have several chimneys, these big mill chimneys popped up. So somewhere down the line, one of several of my predecessors decided, instead of doing house chimneys and making a few quid, they'd start a business that looked specifically at the newest thing on the block, mill chimneys. So,
which is why they built the factories, and then we're like, shit, we need to get someone to clean these.
Because the chimneys were pretty going 24/7. You know, they worked 12-hour shifts. So these factories only shut down maybe once or twice a year. They had a couple of holidays back then. Me and my wife were talking about it the other day. There's an expression in Australia for a public holiday. and it's the same as it used to be in England. Everybody had that same time off. It's an old holiday term.
No idea. I'd know it if I heard it, but I can't pick it up.
If I remember, I'll try and I'll let you know. But say it's called May Day.
Yeah.
The May Day holidays. The whole nation or that entire area, or the whole of Yorkshire, would have that week off.
Okay.
Or that 10 days or whatever.
And was that partly related to the factories wanting to clean themselves more than anything?
Probably.
Or, yeah.
Well, it gave the mill owners time to shut down and do all the big maintenance.
Yeah.
And a lot of the families, by then they had trains. They could jump on train and go to coast for a holiday.
Yeah.
You know, that were another sort of thing. But
so that was when it all started sort of getting together, did it? People suddenly could do more, and
that's right. Yeah, leisure became
a thing,
something
that existed.
Exactly. Yeah, you know, you could go on a holiday, jump on train, and within a couple of hours you'd be on the beach.
That must have been mind blowing, right? Because obviously, the accents in Britain show that people don't move too much, at least initially, right?
Yeah.
When they're growing up.
Yeah.
Compared to somewhere like Australia, where here it's not uncommon. Like, I was thinking about this the other day. Like, was your family always in that one town, effectively, as far back as you can remember? Because for me, I have, like, my grandparents on my mum's side were living in Brisbane. They moved to Adelaide, then they moved to Melbourne, then they went to Britain. They had my mum. They came back to Melbourne, I believe, or it might have been earlier than that. But my dad had a grandfather from Scotland who came to Australia, met my grandmother here in Melbourne. So people were from all over the place.
Yeah.
As opposed to just a small town like Geelong or something, and it's like, we've always been here. So is that what it's much more like that, is it, in somewhere like Yorkshire?
I suppose it were a safety thing as well. You know, it made you feel secure.
Yeah.
If you were born in, you know, say Bradford, you'd stay in Bradford. If you went outside Bradford, not only would your accent give you away, but you'd also be among strangers, and life were tough.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't try and make it any tougher. You know, you wouldn't get a job in a different area because they wouldn't know you, and it'd be like jobs for the locals, you know, sort of thing.
So there is a much more of a tribal kind of thing going on.
Probably, yeah. I mean, look, don't get me wrong. Some people did have to travel to get work. They had to travel long distances. But if you were born in an area where you could walk or cycle or get the bus, because it's on a lot smaller scale to here.
Yeah.
You know, you'll think of commuting from here to Melbourne. People jump on a train or a bus in Geelong area or Bellarine and go to Melbourne to work.
So my dad does that, yeah.
It's
like 2 hours each way.
That's crazy for a unless you're working, unless you've got a really good job and you're working in London, you'll commute from Yorkshire, but not many people do that.
Well, what's the saying? Like, in Australia, 100 years is a long time, and what was it? Australia, it's 100 years is a long time, and in Britain, 100 kilometres is a long way.
Yeah, no, that's true. You know, 100 kilometres is a long way, you know, geographically, and
if you have to walk.
Well, my wife came from Doncaster. I were from Leeds. The distance is about 45 miles.
Yeah,
takes you 40 minutes on motorway in a car.
Yeah,
I'd never been to Doncaster.
How old were you at the time?
Well, I was 21 when I met my wife.
Far out.
I'd never been to Doncaster. All I knew is that Doncaster were quite a rough and tumble place, and that's where all coal mines were. Yeah. So when I met my wife and she was from Doncaster, I was like, wow, you know what I mean? I've never been. What's it like? And she's
got teeth.
Exactly, yeah. She's only got one head. But she'd never been to my part of the world. That is a big difference between there and here.
Because here, I think in Australia, that you might encounter that kind of thing, but it would be in rural parts of Australia where it's like, okay, their parents were farmers, the children grew up on the farm, maybe they went to a local school nearby.
Yeah.
More recently, they're probably going to university and getting educated because they have to try and keep up with the changes.
Yeah.
But previously it would be that. But in the cities, it would be, I think everyone moved everywhere. Like there was just much more pressure.
I wonder if that's, you know, sort of instilled in them from, you know, like you say, when they first came over, they'd done that massive move, that travel from England by ship or whatever, and then, you know, back in the early days, and then they were set free.
Well, it was fucked. I was reading a book recently about the explorers, the first explorers who got here. It took 22 years for them to cross the Blue Mountains.
Really?
Yeah, because they were living in Sydney, which is only, maybe 100, 200 kilometres from the CBD to the Blue Mountains.
Wow.
The suburbs pretty much hit the Blue Mountains now.
Yeah.
But it took them 22 years before anyone had actually gone over, found a way across.
Found a way through.
So there were heaps of these stories where they actually just stayed there. One really funny one was when they arrived on the first fleet, they had, I think it was 8 head of cattle. They got them off the boats and they just buggered off. Disappeared into the bush, and so they had to wait for the next batch of boats to come out to get the next lot of cattle. But I think it was 14 years later, someone stumbled upon them, and it was a herd now of 100 cattle.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they'd survived out in the bush. But yeah, so at least the initial colonies were all sort of very stuck together. But the explorers, they were the crazy ones who went massive distances. That blows my mind.
22 years to get across Blue Mountains.
Yeah.
But I don't know how big they are, but they'll be quite a vast.
I think they just couldn't find an easy route through, and there was no reason. There's nothing over there for them to get. Right, there's not another town or another city in terms of, a colony or something that they need to get to. It was just, we can expand out here. And so I think they wanted the cattle feeding grounds, ultimately.
Right, okay.
And so once they'd sort of taken up all the space on one side, they were like, all right, time to hop over. But yeah, it blew my mind. I was like, for 22 years.
That's crazy.
Yeah, imagine that 2 decades. You didn't go as far as from here to Melbourne.
Yeah.
In terms of a settlement.
Yeah. And it's full of stories like that. In Australia, it's got...
Yeah.
I read a book about a murderer in Australia.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah. this guy...
All right, guys, so that was part 1 of this interview. This interview ended up being quite long. So John came over, I got him a beer out of the fridge, we sat down, and I sort of just let the episode go and wanted to see what would happen as it happened. And we ended up having a chat for about an hour and 45 minutes. So I thought that might be a bit of a stint for you guys. That might be a bit of a long episode. So I've divided this one in 2. The next one will be out next week. Keep your ears open for it. Keep your eyes open for it. Keep your ears open for it as well. And I'll see you in part 2 next week. All the best.